Well, let's stay there with our main story. With me here in the studio is Hassan Hassan, Middle East analyst and co-author of ISIS, Inside the Army of Terror. Hassan, thanks so much for joining us. As we can see, momentum's really building for that coalition. But are airstrikes sufficient?
I think they're not, and I think the Prime Minister is aware of that, and that's why he's pushing also for a potential diplomatic track, and that's exactly what's needed. I think the current campaign, which is a sort of a measured campaign that targets ISIS while trying to avoid any collateral damage, and I think that's the way to go. There are now calls for dropping more bombs in Iraq and Syria, and I think that's the wrong approach.
Then what needs to be done?
What needs to be done is basically, I think the current campaign is doing well to a certain degree, and it's better than other options that are being called for. But there needs to be a diplomatic and a political track to catch on with what the campaign is achieving militarily on the ground. I think the military aspect of the campaign, or the kinetic aspect of the campaign, is sometimes doing there are unintended consequences for the campaign, and that's because there's not enough effort being done to kind of get forces on the ground in both Iraq and Syria to actually work with the international community.
Whose forces, though?
So it has to be local forces, not international forces. So Iraqis and Syrians, Shia, Kurdish, Arabs.
Syria, who would they rely on?
There are plenty of choices. For example, I know personally people who were driven out of, for example, eastern Syria by ISIS, and instead of going and hanging out in Turkey or going outside the country as refugees,
the Free Syrian Army,
they're fighting ISIS. They actually have been fighting ISIS elsewhere when they were after they were driven out of Deir ez-Zor, for example, or Raqqa and elsewhere, and they're fighting ISIS where? On the front lines in Idlib, in Aleppo, in southern Syria, in Kalamoun, like near the Lebanese borders. These are committed fighters who have proven time and again that they're committed to the fight against ISIS, but as well as also to the fight against Bashar al-Assad. And unless you reach out to these people and convince them that there is a political track that is viable and credible, they won't join the international forces. That model has proven effective in Iraq, and effective also in northeastern Syria with the Kurds and some Arab allies, and it needs to be expanded.
How much should there be involvement from Arab leaders in this coalition? Because there was an attempt about a year ago to form a coalition led by the Arab world. It hasn't really gotten anywhere.
That was actually successful in the beginning. So we saw many Arab countries owning the fight against ISIS, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Jordanians.
But they've all dropped out now.
They dropped out, but why did they do that? They did that because the campaign is dragging on without any parallel kind of tracks, which I just mentioned, diplomatic and political track, to resolve the conflict in Iraq and Syria. And without doing that, they feel that this is a long-term, effort that the Americans might be willing to kind of engage in, but they have more priorities. For example, in the Gulf states, they have more priorities in Yemen. They can't commit to Syria and Yemen at the same time for a long time.
Will these airstrikes, though, it may destroy ISIS, but it's the Islamist ideology that needs to be tackled?
Exactly. I mean, the Prime Minister said that a crucial step is basically to deal with the ISIS at source, to kind of be there. If it's not to deal with the ideology and fight the group militarily, at least you can be on the ground and gather intelligence that could be useful for for safety and security elsewhere. So the ideology remains a long-term challenge, and I think John Allen, the American general who was responsive, he was leading the campaign against ISIS
and their ideology.
Yeah, he spoke about the ideology as a long-term effort.
Hassan Hassan, thanks so much.